we want to introduce you to another segment, ongoing segment that we're going to have on this podcast. It's what we call the rabbit hole. Now, the rabbit hole is about what Joe or I, either together, separate, have been obsessed with over the last couple of weeks. We want to share it with you. It could run the gamut between something we just, we took an old book off our shelves. We're like, yeah, I'm finally reading this book. Or it's something that we've gotten ourselves caught up with that we can't stop obsessing over it. We're like, and then we find ourselves down the rabbit hole. 2 days later, a week later, we're still on this one topic.
And sometimes the rabbit hole will be something like I spent about 2 years on a Norm Macdonald rabbit hole.
2 years.
and that.
Do you know Rip Van Winkle, like the guy that wakes up after like 6 years or whatever? You're like I spent 2 years on Norm Macdonald.
So there are certain things but I've always loved Norm Macdonald. So but we didn't have YouTube in the 90s, so there's so much to discover that I didn't know was there. And I basically spent the entire pandemic watching Norm videos on YouTube. This week's rabbit hole is a little different. This is something I never knew existed. Now, apparently you were somewhat familiar with this. But I had no idea until I stumbled upon this.
I heard about this a couple of years ago, and then I forgot about it. Somebody, I don't know who it was, shared this with me, but it has to do with a restaurant that I grew up going to almost every week until they all started to close.
Of course, we're talking about Rax
Roast Beef restaurants. And they were dotted all about the Midwest. Joe, you've shared that you're from New Jersey. I should share I'm from heart of Illinois.
But I was born in Ohio, so we were like neighbors for.
So you are a good Midwestern boy.
Well, we weren't exactly neighbors. We had Indiana in the middle, but
Right. So Ohio had Rax, and they still do.
Ohio had Rax. We may have even had Rax on the East Coast growing up. There were like 500 of them at one point.
They're all over. Rax
they were
was essentially an equivalent of Arby's, and there's probably like 5 of them still around.
Yeah, and I do remember Rax growing up. Like I definitely remember seeing Rax. I think we probably ate at them too, because I think there were some in truck stops in Pennsylvania that we used to. Because we with family in Ohio, we constantly made the trips between New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Rax is one of those things I kind of forgot existed until I saw it, and then I immediately remembered it.
So, by the way, everybody, if you're still with us, the rabbit hole isn't the fact that we're like, hey, there's a fast food restaurant we used to go to.
No, it really has very little to do with Rax as much as this amazing, groundbreaking part of their history.
So towards the end of Rax's popularity, and in the midst of trying to reinvent themselves,
while they were flaming out,
they were they were on the way to losing most of their restaurants. They rebranded themselves with a cartoon character called Mr. Delicious.
Hello there. I'm Mr. Delicious, the new cartoon spokesman for Rax Restaurants. My job? To encourage you to enjoy tasty, affordable meals in a more mature dining environment. You see, Mr. Delicious doesn't appreciate unnecessary commotion while he's eating. It brings out the dangerous, hostile side in Mr. D. At least that's what his analyst says. Anyway, at Rax, Mr. Delicious can enjoy a tasty sandwich or salad without bright yellow formica upsetting his stomach. He can rest his feet on carpet, since Rax has confidence that Mr. D won't drop his twisty fries. He can lose himself in a cheap romance novel without his elbows sticking to the table. And Mr. Delicious always leaves Rax with a few bucks left. That's just grand, because his analyst charges a lot to keep Mr. D's hostility all locked up. So if you're looking for a stress-free fast food alternative, visit Rax and tell him Mr. Delicious sent you. Dickety-dee.
Rax, you can eat here.
Now, and this isn't just like some guy at Rax came up with this terrible idea. they hired like one of the top ad agencies, I think in New York, to develop this game plan for this character, Mr. Delicious. And it was going to be like, this was supposed to be the thing that like saved Rax.
Yeah. And here's what's funny about Mr. Delicious is he's basically, from what I gather, if I'm remembering it correctly, a black and white kind of 2D cartoon character. So he's not like, animated with a lot of nuance. He just kind of like, he kind of walks and shuffles. And
I picture a guy like with like thick, glasses and like a plaid jacket. He looks like an animated character who would be selling cigarettes in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm. So we're being nostalgic about Rax and this restaurant that we knew growing up, but the ad campaign itself was bizarrely nostalgic. It was like, so this ad firm had this idea of a very retro version of a patron to their restaurant, this man, Mr. Delicious. And here's what's so funny and just bizarrely strange about him was in we're going to play some of these clips for you so you can hear them, is Rax was turning away from being a family restaurant
to being an adult restaurant.
Yeah. So Mr. Delicious doesn't want to go eat with his grubby kids. He doesn't want to feel like, oh, I don't want to go to this stupid place where the kids' playland is and there's Happy Meals. I want to go to a distinguished, refined, adult fast food restaurant where I can get my roast beef sandwich for 99 cents.
Hello, I'm Mr. Delicious, the new spokesman for Rax Restaurants. My job? To encourage you to enjoy tasty, affordable meals in a more mature dining environment. I know what you're thinking. He's a cartoon. And cartoons are mostly for people who wet their pants. But not Mr. D. He's a special cartoon for adults. And Mr. Delicious always carries this briefcase. Contents? Watch for me and visit Rax. Tickety-dee.
And the commercials are these, like, they're almost like lamentations, like, of Mr. Delicious just talking about how terrible his life is. And it's like,
Yes.
it's like you talk about Cheers, the Cheers theme song. If you listen to the Cheers theme song, it's the song is basically about how mundane life is, but sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. Rax is like the light at the end of the tunnel for Mr. Delicious's miserable existence.
Well, hello, Mr. D again. Our subject? Value Express combos at the Rax drive-thru. These tasty delights are priced in low, even dollar amounts, so there's no change. That's just grand, because Mr. Delicious just had some rather delicate surgery. If there's no change, he doesn't have to squirm so much to put it back in his pocket, now does he? He just grabs his combo and drives ever so slowly over the speed bump. Tickety-dee.
So these commercials are so strange because, yes, they always loop back around to, my life is kind of horrible. I almost don't know if I can wake up tomorrow, but at least I can go to Rax. And in the midst of it, the commercials are basically saying, hey, everybody, don't bring your kids to our restaurant anymore.
Well, hello. Remember me? I'm Mr. Delicious. Did you know the Rax Value menu features a full array of adult-sized delectables for only 99 cents each? That's right. And Mr. Delicious can really appreciate a bargain like that. After all, he's still trying to recover from that bout with midlife crisis in '89. Fortunately, he was able to sell the Porsche back to the dealer. But much to his chagrin, Mr. Delicious discovered that custom-designed hair weaves are non-refundable. Same for the rotating disco glitter ball he installed in the basement. And that vacation he took to Bora Bora with those two young friends, well, that left Mr. Delicious feeling empty and unfulfilled. Unlike the robust sandwiches, baked potatoes, and refreshing drinks on the Rax Value menu for only 99 cents each. Tickety-dee.
Value menu available at participating restaurants. Rax, you can eat here.
So this is our rabbit hole. We want to invite you into this, discover the glorious, bizarre world of Mr. Delicious and how it was this amazing failure for Rax. But here's what we want to say. We might have a future episode on Mr. Delicious, and
We're not done with him.
We hope to have a future with Mr. Delicious. We hope that he actually becomes part of our lives.
When I first heard Mr. Delicious, I went on a solid 3-day rabbit hole of just watching these commercials over and over. We just need to point out there is an official, like, I don't know, I guess you'd call it a documentary, but it's a promotional video that Rax made for Mr. Delicious. This is on YouTube. You can find this. To me, this is the most fascinating character. And the tragedy of Mr. Delicious is that Rax financially crumbled just 3 months after this campaign was, released. I guess you could argue that he was the nail in their coffin. I don't think so.
He's the E.T. video game. Remember the E.T. video game? Like they made billions of them and they just buried him in a landfill.
Alamogordo, New Mexico.
He's the E.T. video game of the fast food world.
And that's exactly really what Mr. Delicious, he's come to be seen over time as this terrible mistake. Mm-hmm. And I want to redeem that. Because I think that it's unfair. I think Mr. Delicious was ahead of his time.
Yeah. So here's what we'd like to say. We have a bizarre sense of humor. We'd like to try to find a way to bring Mr. Delicious back. And we don't know what that means for us here in this podcast. The podcast itself is an experiment, all these episodes that we want to do. But Rax, if you're out there, do you want to sponsor a little fledgling podcast on nostalgia, on pop culture? Could Mr. Delicious be a fit for you again, Rax? Maybe Mr. Delicious could be what revives Rax and brings Rax back into being a prominent fast food establishment.
Absolutely, because what I want to see happen, what I want to do for Rax, and hear me out, Rax people, we want to make Rax that last blockbuster. That last blockbuster that like people travel all over the country to go to, that one Blockbuster video store that's still standing. I want people to drive thousands of miles to go to Rax.
And then they can buy their Mr. Delicious.
And there should be a
coffee mugs,
standee of Mr. Delicious greeting them at the door. There should be merchant t-shirts, tickety D.
Yeah.
Right on the tickety D. Mr. Delicious is retro cool.
And we have ideas for other characters too. There needs to be a Mrs. Delicious and the son. I don't know what his name is. Maybe Randy Delicious. I don't know. That just sounds funny to me. Randy Delicious, and is he a brat? But you know what?
They were just starting to build this incredible universe of Mr. Delicious, and we only got glimpses. We know about his vasectomy. We know that he suffered a midlife crisis that sent him to Bora Bora with two young friends. We know he was in therapy. We know he had an ex-wife at some point. So Mrs. Delicious isn't even the first Mrs. Delicious.
There's a lot there to unpack.
There really is. Plus, he did like to spend nights at the Rusty Anchor.
Yeah. We all know where that leads.
I guess you could say I hired Mr. Delicious. It really started when we were looking for an advertising agency. I looked at over 50 agencies, and there was one that stood head and shoulders above all the others, and that was Deutsch in New York, a relatively young but very, very creative agency who, in my opinion, is producing the best advertising in the United States today. And through their process, which was a very detailed, analytical, as well as qualitative process by visiting stores, talking to managers, talking to employees, and spending a lot of time trying to understand the positioning of Rax. And out of that positioning came the development through their creative process of Mr. Delicious, who was absolutely going to go down as one of the classic characters in advertising history.